Hargreaves Lansdown is one of the largest and most trusted asset managers in the UK, with millions of Brits trusting them to manage their money and investments. They've got a track record of excellent customer service and have a strong reputation for reliability and are generally seen as a safe pair of hands in the industry. But inevitably this all comes at a cost. Their services are really expensive, especially when compared to the competition. This video will discuss whether using Hargreaves Lansdown is actually worth the money, taking into account all of the pros and cons. And we'll also talk about some of the cheaper alternatives that are available on the market. Since they were founded back in 1981, Hargreaves Lansdown have amassed almost 2 million customers, many of whom absolutely swear by HL and would never dream of going anywhere else. And it seems that one of the main reasons why HL have so many die-hard fans is because of their reliability and reputation as a safe and secure asset manager. After all, when it comes to money, and especially when we're talking about retirement investments and life savings, people will tend to be really picky on who they choose to manage these investments for them, and will be prepared to pay a bit more for a brand with a strong reputation. And Hargreaves Lansdown is probably the best example of an asset manager like this in the UK. But it's not only their reputation that makes HL a really good investment platform, they've also got a huge amount of choice when it comes to the investments you can make. They've got over 3,000 exchange traded and mutual fund, as well as loads of individual shares that you can invest in. For context, this is far more choice than someone like Vanguard, for example, who only have around 85 different funds that you can choose from and don't offer investments into individual shares. Also, another key benefit of Hargreaves Lansdown is their excellent customer service. You can pick up the phone and get through to someone that really knows what they're talking about. You don't get through to some 17-year-old in a random call centre. The person you're talking to genuinely knows what they're on about, and you can usually get through to someone in 5 minutes or less, which is a massive benefit of HL. So Hargreaves Lansdown really have three key advantages. That's their reliability, the choice that's on offer, and their excellent customer service. But inevitably these features will come at a cost. And in the case of HL, this is a pretty high cost. So let's take a look at exactly how much they charge. Now, HL charges different fees for different products, but let's start with their most common product, investment funds. Now, each investment fund will have its own management fee, but generally this has little to do with the platform itself. What we're really concerned with is the account fee, which we can see summarised on the screen now. This account fee is calculated in bands. So the first 250 grand that you have in funds will be subject to a 0.45% fee. Then anything up to £1 million will be charged at 0.25%, and so on. And any balances above 2 million quid won't be subject to an account fee. And for investment funds, this fee is uncapped, so it can add up pretty quickly, especially on larger balances. For example, let's say you've got a pretty chunky retirement pot of £400,000. This means that the first £250,000 will be charged at 0.45%, plus the remaining 150 grand will be charged at 0.25%, which comes out at a total annual account fee of 1,500 quid, which is a hell of a lot in my book. Now, if you hold individual shares with HL, you'll again be charged the 0.45% annual account fee, but this is actually capped at £3.75 a month, which actually isn't bad, until you realise that HL charge £11.95 every time you want to buy or sell an individual share, which really is daylight robbery in my opinion, when there are many other platforms that will do this completely for free. And we'll talk about some of these other platforms later. Now, I must mention that not all of Hargreaves Lansdown's products are this expensive. For example, they've got a junior ISA, which is completely free of any account fees. I suppose the rationale is that you set one up for your kid, and then when the kid inherits the account, they then keep the account with Hargreaves Lansdown and start to pay the more expensive fees. And it's also worth mentioning that if you hold exchange traded funds or ETFs with Hargreaves Lansdown, then the account fee on these is actually capped at £45 per year, which isn't bad, especially on larger amounts. But as you can see, in general, HL's fees are pretty high. Take again the example of the 400 grand pension pot, which it costs £1,500 each year just for HL to look after, which is really expensive. So I suppose we're now left with a big question: is it all worth it? Now, there's no doubt that with HL, you really get what you pay for when it comes to things like customer service. As someone that was a customer for around 3 years, I can speak from personal experience when I say that their customer service really is very, very good. When you call them up, the people on the other end of the phone genuinely know what they're talking about, and you never have to wait longer than about 5 minutes to speak to someone. And if you're not keen on speaking to people over the phone, then you can use their email service, which is just as good. And I also understand that there's a lot of people that would only trust a legacy broker with a brand image as strong as someone like Hargreaves Lansdown to manage their savings and investments, and would be much more cautious when it came to these more techie app-based platforms which are available on the market. But in my opinion at least, the fees that Hargreaves Lansdown charge are pretty hard to justify, especially if you've got a large amount of money sat with them, and there are plenty of other asset managers with just as good of a reputation as Hargreaves Lansdown, but who are much, much cheaper. And even if you've got a smaller account balance, a 0.45% fee might not sound like a lot, but this will quickly eat into your investment returns massively. I've spoken in videos before about how important it is to reduce your investment fees as much as possible in order to maximise returns, as differences in fees of just 0.1% per year can translate into thousands, if not tens of thousands of lost returns over the long term. Okay, so if you're on board and want to think about some cheaper alternatives, I've actually made a whole video where I discuss the best investment providers out there, so take a look if you're interested. But here we'll discuss some of the main alternatives to Hargreaves Lansdown. Now, if you're like a lot of HL customers in that you really value a strong reputation and excellent customer service, then I think one of the best, cheaper alternatives for you could be AJ Bell. Now, AJ Bell is very similar to Hargreaves Lansdown in the services that they offer and for their reputation for excellent customer service. In fact, many people will tell you that AJ Bell actually has better customer service than Hargreaves Lansdown, and we can see some evidence of this in their Trustpilot score, with Hargreaves Lansdown coming in at 4.3 out of 5, and AJ Bell coming in at a really impressive 4.8 out of 5. But the main difference with AJ Bell is it's considerably cheaper. For example, on their investment funds, they charge 0.25% per year instead of 0.45% per year. And again, this is charged in bands, but there's no charge on balances above 500 grand, compared with an upper limit of £2 million with Hargreaves Lansdown. Now, this difference of 0.2% per year might not sound like a lot, but it really does add up. Think again of the example of the pension pot, which is worth 400 grand. Now, this costs £1,500 with Hargreaves Lansdown, but it only costs £775 with AJ Bell, which is a big saving considering this is an annual fee rather than a one-off fee. However, AJ Bell do charge a £1.50 dealing charge every time you buy and sell investment funds, or a £5 charge every time you buy and sell individual shares or ETFs, which can quickly add up. And for a lot of people, and for me personally as well, to be honest, these dealing fees are enough to put people off AJ Bell, as there's really no need for them to charge it. It's just kind of an added bonus for them, especially when you think about all of the other platforms which don't charge dealing fees. And one of these platforms is the one I want to talk about next, and you've probably heard of them before, Vanguard. Now, Vanguard have a reputation for excellent value for money, and this really is true, and in my opinion are excellent alternatives to Hargreaves Lansdown or AJ Bell, as long as you're not bothered about having a huge amount of choice when it comes to the investments that you can make. Like I mentioned earlier, Vanguard only have around 85 funds and ETFs that you can choose from, but for 95 to 99% of investors, this will be more than enough. They've also been around for many decades, and like Hargreaves Lansdown and AJ Bell, they've got a good reputation for reliability and great customer service. Now, Vanguard used to be hands down the best traditional asset manager when it came to fees. However, they've recently changed their fee structure, and nowadays they're actually not so good if you've got a smaller account balance. I've made a whole video about this new fee structure and why it's bad for smaller accounts, but all you really need to know is that if you've got an account balance of £5,000 or less, then Vanguard won't be the best option for you. But for larger accounts, Vanguard can be an incredibly cheap option. Their account fee is just 0.15% per year, or £4 a month for accounts less than £32,000. So if we look again at our 400 grand pension pod example, which costs £1,500 with HL and £775 with AJ Bell, this would only cost £600 a year with Vanguard, which is much better. And as mentioned, Vanguard don't charge any dealing fees, so you don't have to pay anything when you buy or sell funds on their platform. But probably the biggest drawbacks of Vanguard is the fact that they don't offer individual shares on their platform, which could put some people off, and the fact that their customer service is seen to be not quite as good as that of Hargreaves Lansdown or AJ Bell. They've got really good customer service, don't get me wrong, but some people would say that it's not quite as good, as they've had trouble in the past dealing with things like slow wait times for transferring ISAs in and out of their platform. But in my opinion, having a slightly less good customer service offering than Hargreaves Lansdown is a small price to pay for the big differences in fees between the two platforms. And finally, the last alternative platform that I want to mention is Trading 212. Trading 212 is an online-only platform which offers multiple products, including a stocks and shares ISA and a cash ISA. Now, Trading 212 is a really interesting alternative because when it comes to their stocks and shares ISA, it's essentially completely free, as they don't charge an account fee, they don't charge any dealing fees or any commissions or anything like that. And this might sound too good to be true. How the hell can they be offering a completely free product? They must be making money somehow. Well, the answer lies in some of the other products that they offer, in particular their CFD trading account, which in my opinion is essentially a glorified gambling account, but is highly profitable for Trading 212. And they essentially use the profits from this part of the business to fund the other parts of the business, including the stocks and shares ISA and the cash ISA. And I suppose their rationale is that the really good ISA offerings will attract in new customers, and at least some proportion of these new customers will move over to the CFD trading arm and roll the dice with some day trading, which will be incredibly profitable for Trading 212. And the benefit of this is, if you've got no intention of opening a trading account, then you can still make use of their really good ISA offerings and just never use the CFD arm of the business. I've actually explored this issue in detail in another video, so feel free to take a look at that if you're interested. But essentially all you need to know is that if you're in the market for a stocks and shares ISA and have no intention of opening a CFD trading account, then Trading 212 could be a really good option for you, as you can take advantage of their fee-free and commission-free investing products. Now, probably the main drawback with someone like Trading 212 is you're inevitably going to get a less good customer service experience than you would with someone like Hargreaves Lansdown. But to be fair, if I've ever had an issue, they've managed to sort it pretty quickly for me, and I've always had decent experiences. And just to back this up a little bit, Trading 212 do have a Trustpilot score of 4.6 out of 5, which is really, really good. And obviously they haven't got the same reputation for reliability and security as some of the other legacy brokers, mainly because they haven't been around for that long. And to be fair, the name Trading 212 doesn't really help either, but they are under the same level of Financial Conduct Authority regulation and authorization as all of the other brokers we've mentioned in this video. And just to point out as well, 212 don't offer SIPs, so if you're in the market for a new pension manager, then Trading 212 isn't the place to go. But if it's a stocks and shares ISA that you're after, then it's a really good place to consider. So hopefully you found this video useful. So please drop me a like and consider subscribing if you've enjoyed. And feel free to take a look at some of the other videos we've got on the channel, as there's plenty others on the topics of personal finance and investing, and many more in the works to come. Thanks for watching.